And so I am not saying overtly and outright every single person who ever has a weed card will never be able to buy a gun again. I'm saying if they want grounds to take your weapons and you have had a weed card, they will come, they will have a notice and they will say, look, you have a weed card, you're a user, tell it to a judge, we're taking your guns. They'll use it as a pretext. We do.
Wait, hold on. Okay, I looked at the 4470 things. I'm curious now. So it says, so it says, are you an unlawful user of marijuana? So I would say if you've got the card, you're probably not unlawful, but federally, because it's a federal form, maybe you would be.
You would absolutely be. They actually say on the form, I'm pretty sure it says note, regardless of local laws. See what it says? It says that, right?
Yeah, it says possession of marijuana remains unlawful under federal law, regardless of whether it has been legalized. Oh, shit. Well, government's coming for my gun soon. It's
completely insane.
You're like, oh, crap. I don't think it's principles. I don't think anyone's principled at all.
Yeah, I am.
But I'm not saying that.
I am too.
I'm not saying that from like a dejected, sense or like I'm jaded and blackpilled. I'm saying it that people genuinely don't understand the moral philosophies around principles and their positions. So the example I often give is when it came to Florida on the parental rights and education bill, you had conservatives being like, parents have the final say in whether or not their kids are being exposed to this stuff and whether or not their kids are going to get these treatments. The teachers have no right to withhold that information from the parents. And then my response is, in Washington, they completely agree that the parents have final say. So when the parent says the child should get sex change surgery, the government should not be allowed to intervene to stop it. You see the point? The principle is the same. Should parents have final say? But both conservatives and left liberals or whatever position have a differing view of when it should be allowed. When it comes to a child deciding they are trans, the left passes laws saying they can withhold that from parents. When it comes to parents wanting to give their children sex change surgery, conservatives argue the state should intervene to stop that. So which is it, right? People don't have principles, they have moral foundations, and they have lines that they're willing to cross or not cross. And so both sides will argue my principle is X, but it does not apply. That's my point.
Sure.
So
I do better.
I don't think there's a do better or there's a bad. It's quite literally, if two factions of people have different moral standards, that's it.
Yeah, but I think the problem is not being honest about those moral standards. Like, I think that's the issue, because when we argue for certain principles, I think everybody ends up, at the end of the day, we're all attacking like the shadows and the ghosts of the people that we're arguing against, because nobody actually believes in a lot of the things they're saying, and that hurts our ability to actually move the conversation forward. Like, there's a lot of people, for instance, I think I even saw this on your Twitter, I don't remember the tweets, there's a lot of conservatives that fucking hated red flag laws, and now after this trans shooting, a whole bunch of conservatives are like, well, should mentally ill people have guns? I'm not actually sure. And it's like, what changed?
And that's exactly my point.
Yeah.
Is that the principles don't apply to most people, left or right.
Sure. But then there are principles there. You just have to dig a little bit deeper. So like for some conservatives, principles just like fuck trans people. I don't want them to have any rights. Rather than like I don't agree with like red flag laws. And we just have to get to like the deeper positions where they actually are, so we can fight against those positions.
See, my thing with red flag laws is I'm completely in favor of them so long as they have an adversarial due process. The problem with red flag laws, literally, is that they're not adversarial. It's like someone can go to a judge, the judge can issue a writ and then just come and take your guns. Whereas due process requires your rights to confront an accuser, to file a rebuttal, to say no, and then actually have a chance to have proper adjudication. So I used to not be in favor of it until it was actually conservatives who argued that through due process, your rights can be curtailed. Hence, like being put in prison. If you break the law and then a court gives you due process and says you broke the law, we can literally lock you in a box and take everything away from you. And I'm like, okay, fair point. In that case, if you're mentally ill and then someone files a claim saying you're a risk to yourself and a harm to yourself or others, then you should have the right to receive a notice in the mail, answer that claim, reject it, and then have a judge actually issue a standard due process. If you're in prison, you can't have guns. You know what I mean? Like so if there is some standard by which we believe you are a threat and you are going to cause harm, then you have a right to challenge that in court, same as any other criminal charge you have. And then if you lose, come take your guns.
Sure. And I think that is that argument is defensible. But it's not defensible if it only comes up when a trans person goes on a shooting spree. That's the
I
only
completely
issue
agree.
Right? And it seems like there's a lot of arguments against red flag laws that are still standing. Like those arguments didn't go away. Like I'm probably against red flag laws. I lean slightly against them just because I feel like it makes it so hard. If you're a guy that likes guns and you've got like mental issues, man, going to a therapist becomes really fucking scary.
Yeah.
Because what if you get a diagnosis that is now precluding you from owning firearms? And now you've got to show up in court and you've got to fight a judge for your Second Amendment right, which is a very important one in the United States. That gets hairy. And depending on how people, represent red flag laws and what type they're pushing for, it is a really scary thing. But I'm just saying that.
That's a good point, and that's a challenge.
It reminds me of the do you guys know BoJack Horseman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that scene with the, saying the women carry guns and she's in front of Congress and she's like, well, if you don't want women to carry guns because you're worried about what's going to happen, then you either have to ban all guns or you've got to let women do it. And they like ban all guns. It's like, okay. Well, that's kind of what it feels like happened with the transgender thing after the shooting where conservatives are like all of a sudden, because they're like, well, maybe it is really important that we look at the mental health of people that have guns. And like everyone on the left is like, what the fuck? Yeah, of course. But
Well, I agree. I think if someone goes on Prozac, you could argue that they're not mentally well for a gun. If someone's an alcoholic,
that's
you
like
could argue
25% of fucking Americans at this
exactly.
point, though.
It's
It is.
pharmaceuticals.
That's scary. And there's another interesting thing I talk about when I was in L.A. in Venice, and you got those guys selling weed cards, and they're like, I'm walking down the street going to the skate park, and this guy goes, yeah, man, you get your weed card yet? You get your weed card? And I'm like, nah, I'm a weed card. He's like, why not? Why don't you have your weed card? And I'm like, I don't need one. He's like, I'm not sick. And he goes, oh, well, you skateboard, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, don't you like hurt your legs or whatever? And I was like, yeah, sometimes my knees. And he goes, oh, bro, you got knee problems? Oh, you need some meat. You need some weed. You got to get a weed card. Doctor will get you signed up. Not interested. You get that weed card. You smoke weed. You aren't eligible. You can't own a gun.
Maybe for physical pain, you could get away with it. But if you say it's stress, you're
No.
Ian.
Wait.
That's
Is that true? Or are you saying
No.
it could theoretically be true with red flag laws?
On the form, it asks you if you are a user of narcotics. And so the risk is if you have a weed prescription card, yes, you are. And that means you will be ineligible for owning a gun.
It's insane.
Huh.
Yeah, so you ever see what are they called? The forms you fill out when you have to buy a gun? It asks you if you're a user of narcotics.
And they have it classified federally as a Schedule 1 narcotic.
Right. It's like the worst possible one. If you have a weed card, I don't think you'll be able to argue you weren't lying. They're going to say, you have a weed card prescription, like, to do this drug.
There's no shot. I can't believe that.
I've never heard it. That's actually real. That anyone's ever had their guns taken away because they had a weed card. I've never heard that. I can see that argument, though.
You know what? I know that's not the case, because if that was, I would have heard conservatives complaining. I would complain about it.
They wanted Hunter Biden arrested over it because he filled out a form and said he wasn't a drug user when he's a crackhead.
No. But that's
literally why they want him arrested.
for Hunter Biden?
Hunter Biden filled out a form. The form was released publicly, and on it he said he was not a drug user, despite
the 4473 for a gun?
The background check form for a gun. It asks you if you're a user of narcotics.
I feel like they wanted him arrested because they said that he's doing illegal dealings overseas where he's roping his father into the...
Specifically for the gun issue, it was like his girlfriend or whatever, his wife threw the gun in a dumpster behind his school.
Did they accurately date the crack use, though, for when he filled out the form?
That was the question.
That's really important.
Is the argument he quit doing crack a long time ago, thus he was saying no, and the argument was he's like still a crackhead. They found a crack pipe in his car around some time or whatever. And so I am not saying overtly and outright every single person who ever has a weed card will never be able to buy a gun again. I'm saying if they want grounds to take your weapons and you have had a weed card, they will come, they will have a notice, and they will say, look, you have a weed card, you're a user, tell it to a judge, we're taking your guns. They'll use it as a pretext. We do.
Wait, hold on. Okay, I looked up the 4470 things. I'm curious now. So it says, so it says, are you an unlawful user of marijuana? So I would say if you've got the card, you're probably not unlawful, but federally,
no.
This is a federal
Yes.
form, maybe you would be.
You would absolutely be. They actually say on the form, I'm pretty sure it says note, regardless of local laws. See what it says? It says that, right?
Yeah, it says possession of marijuana remains unlawful under federal law, regardless of whether it has been legalized. Oh, shit, well. Government's coming for my gun soon.
Completely insane.
You're like, oh crap.
This country is built on the back of hemp, man. Look at George Washington's eyes on the $1 bill. He's stoned.
Although I will say, I've never heard of like the ATF cross-referencing databases to like axe guns from people that have like legal marijuana cards or whatever.
But they can if they want to.
Theoretically, maybe.
Society is broken, want you locked inside a cubicle. Addicted to pornography, liquor, and pharmaceuticals. Tell you that you're fat and poor and you were never beautiful. Then tweet how much they love you when they hear about your funeral. We can't be free, can't have no peace till we're on the same team, but y'all are sheep. Glued to screens, just part of the